Merry Christmas and welcome to a festive edition of the British Sitcom History Podcast. I'm Gareth and with me today as always is Alan.
Hello, ho, ho, ho.
Ho, ho, ho. This is funny because we are recording this in the middle of November. This is the first time I've had to pretend to enjoy Christmas this year. But ho, ho, ho.
That's quite late for a Christmas special recording.
Today, yeah. Well, we missed the deadline for the Hootenanny. So today we are going to be sharing with you a festive, chestnut roasting, cracker pulling, sleigh bell ringing episode of Rising Damp.
Absolutely what this is not, actually. This is the thing. A rising, damp, miserable Christmas we're going to have.
As you would expect from Rigsby and the crew, it is not very festive, but it is Christmas, and that's good enough for us. So we're actually, just for those who are watching along, we're looking at Series 2, Episode 8 of Rising Damp. It's called For the Man Who Has Everything, and it's their Christmas special of 1975?
75, yeah. So this came immediately after Series 2. And I mean immediately afterwards. It was actually on the 21st of December, which was 2 days after the last episode of the series went out.
So I said it was Episode 8, and obviously that's how it's listed, but I didn't realise it was, in a different place in the schedules.
Well, that's it. We talked about this before, haven't we? The Christmas special. Sometimes it is just tacked onto the end of the series because it's December. Sometimes it's a totally separate thing that's been recorded separately. Sometimes they'll do a Christmas special in a year where they haven't done a series, just to kind of keep people interested. In this case, this is, very much appended to Series 2, and I assume was all done as one filming block. And then the schedules just change around Christmas, so they just fit it in where they can. Yeah. And this is very much, in terms of the narrative of what's going on with Rising Damp, this is just another episode that happens to be set at Christmas. So Frances de la Tour, Miss Jones, isn't in it because at this stage in the series she'd left.
Yeah, I remember you talking about this for those who are not aware, our listeners, we have actually covered Rising Damp before, and you can find that on our YouTube page or scroll down on your podcast. So we're not gonna go into every single character and actor in quite the same details we often do, because we've already done that. But yes, you're right. So there's no Frances de la Tour here, and I remember you talking about this last time, that she was away doing a play or something. She had a better offer, basically.
Yeah, and so she's in the first 4 episodes of this series, I think, and then they contrive a way for her to leave, and then she comes back in the next series.
But her character is replaced by Brenda, who's a new tenant, who's essentially filling a similar role to Miss Jones.
Yeah, she's in a few episodes, and Alan, played by Richard Beckinsale, he's after her. And she's not against the idea. But
I was going to say after, has he not caught her?
Well, you know what it's like in the 70s. You never really get what you want out of it. But there was there's a whole kind of 4-episode arc going on here with Brenda, because she comes in and they have to convince Rigsby to give her the room and all this sort of stuff. So there's a whole kind of bit of backstory here. This plays into that straight away. It's kind of assumed that we know what's going on with these characters. But yeah, she's a tenant.
Yeah, so I, having not seen those previous episodes, I was like, my impression was that Alan and Brenda were having a thing. But obviously Rigsby was completely oblivious to that.
So they are having a thing, but that's why when she just turns up randomly, he thinks, oh, she's just come home. He doesn't go, oh, why have you brought a girl back? He's like, oh, it's Brenda. Yeah. So as we get into this is very much a miserable Christmas with Rigsby. And I think we should use the opportunity of doing a Christmas special to talk about Christmas.
Of course.
Again, in terms of sitcom Christmas specials, sometimes it's just a special that goes out at Christmas. It's not Christmas themed. I'm not interested in any of that. I want a Christmas themed special or go home.
We want mistletoe. Yeah. We want crackers.
So what you usually get is, oh, look, everyone's coming together and we're having a happy Christmas despite all our, usual conflicts. We have talked about an Only Fools and Horse Christmas special where Del Boy's dad turns up, and that becomes the whole thing. But what we get here, even more so, is anti-Christmas. Because the obvious thing to do here is set up Rigsby's on his own and he's miserable and he's being his Rigsby self. And then everyone else turns up and at the end, everyone is like, hey, you know what? We're all here. Let's all get round the dinner table and have a nice, friendly Christmas. But we don't get that.
Yeah, basically, none of them are supposed to be there. They all had better plans, and for one reason or another, all their better plans have been cancelled, and so they all end up back. They all end up back at the slum.
Yes.
But there's still a crucial difference in that all the others have got someone. Like Brenda and Alan are together. Philip's brought his girlfriend. And it's just Rigsby who is ultimately, as ever, alone.
So we get in the opening scene Rigsby alone, and so we have Vienna the cat, his pet cat, who he
of course.
talks
Of course,
to,
Rigby's never alone. There's always got Vienna.
But that gives him a great opportunity to monologue, which is very useful for
I do like this.
purposes.
I do. I sort of noticed this as I was watching it, but it's something that Rising Damp does well because he's got that cat. It does give him license to soliloquize, if that's not too grand a word.
Something also does in Fall and Rise of Reginald Perrin, by the way. He talks to the cat there. Very same thing. So Rigsby, he understands that he's not popular, right? And he knows why. He's not under any illusions here as to, oh my God, why don't people like me? He knows he's a miserable git and everybody hates him. Yeah. And does he care? I think he kind of likes the idea of having, a few friends around at Christmas, but not enough to put the effort.
He doesn't like the idea enough to change.
Yeah, exactly. And so, when he has a chance at some human contact, because the milkman comes knocking on the door, he hides in the larder.
Yeah, because he doesn't want to give him his Christmas box. He don't want to pay him a shilling, so he hides rather than talk to someone on Christmas Day.
Let me ask you about this, right? You're a bit older than me. The old Christmas tipping. So basically service tradesmen, postmen, milkmen, the bin men, you give them a little something at Christmas, right? I mean, this has not been a thing in my life. I mean, it feels like
I remember it being a thing when I was a kid. I remember Mum, giving money to the milkman or whatever. But I think part of the problem now is I don't have a milkman. I haven't had a milkman since the 80s. And I don't know who my postman is. I suppose I could tip the every delivery driver, but, well, I left you a tip, mate. It's in next door's recycling bin. Here's a photograph of it.
Social commentary from Gareth.
A bit of social commentary. Yeah. I don't want to give the impression that I'm as tight as Rigsby. I'm not hiding from the postman. I just never see them.
Your letters might be delivered by a robot. It's possible.
For all I know, they could be like those little co-op cars that go around the estate. But I do think it's a different attitude. But I've got a friend who's a postman. He's in his 50s, been a postman for years. And, he'll bemoan the fact that it's not like it used to be. It's not like you got the same community spirit. And I think that's true. I think the postman used to be part of the community. A milkman was part of the community, knocked on doors, knew everybody. And they've got quotas now, mate. They've got quotas to fill. Can't start around, can't hang about.
We saw this, was it in one of the Till Death Us Do Part films, I think, where the milkman... It was played by Roy Hood, but the milkman comes round and he was taking bets on his round as well.
Yeah, he was the bookie
he had
as
all
well.
sorts of side hustles going on. Yeah.
No, I think, in all seriousness, the nature of the service industries has changed completely. Yeah, and it's, you haven't got that personal service in quite the same way anymore.
I've been watching Keeping Up Appearances recently. Spoiler alert for what we're doing next series. But in that, that's a regular gag that the milkman or the postman comes round and they terrified that she's going to come out.
They
and talk
hate
to
her.
them. Yeah, which I'm not going to get into. We'll get into this in our episode, but yeah, just put the milk down and walk away. You don't have to be polite to her.
Yes.
Why are you being so?
Yes.
Yeah,
well, let's not get into Keeping Up Appearances. I've got so much to say about this. Let's wait.
Right. But yeah, it was like that. That was the 90s, but that was very much like this is something people can watch and relate to. The postman coming round, and it just struck me watching that. I was like, oh yeah, she's sort of excited that the post is arriving. That's something to do in her day. Yeah. It's like, oh, that's a very different life, isn't it? But how many emails do you get a day? Yeah, it's the same principle, isn't it? You have to deal with this stuff.
I'll tell you one question I have on the Christmas tip is he refers to it as a Christmas box, and I've heard that before. What's the box? What's the box? There's no box involved. It's a coin, or it's a bit of money. It's not a box. I wonder what the origin of that is. I did look it up and I couldn't find anything. If anyone knows, tell us, why is it a Christmas box?
Old people, please tell us.
Yeah.
What's the Christmas box?
Okay, so before we talk about the postman himself, I just want to go back for a bit of in-depth scrutiny on the table. Did you notice what is on the table in front of Rigsby as he sat there celebrating Christmas on his own?
I don't think I did, no.
So, firstly, he's got some shop-bought mince pies, which I think is a ruthless extravagance for Rigsby.
Yeah, true.
I'm saying this because when I was a kid, my mum used to make mince pies. And I remember buying some mince pies once as an adult and getting no end of grief for wasting money. But here's the other thing. She used to cook mince pies all year round. I loved mince pies when I was a kid. And I was genuinely married before I learned that mince pies were a Christmas thing. I just thought they were a thing that your mum made.
With Rigsby, he's no cook, is he? He's not cooking for himself. He's got no wife to do it for him. So maybe he does rely on the shop-bought things.
So he's pushed the boat out and he's gone out and bought some mince pies. There's also an unpulled cracker.
Which gets pulled later.
There's a bottle of Double Diamond beer. Do you know the Double Diamond theme song?
Go on.
Double Diamond works wonders, works wonders, works wonders. Like, that advert, I haven't Googled it, but I bet that advert ceased being on the air before I was born. But I know that because my dad used to sing it. And then there's another bottle, and I've got to be honest, it took me quite a bit of Googling to find this because it's half obscured. It was a bottle of Lysander Medium Cyprus Sherry.
Ooh.
Jesus. I mean, I don't know much about sherry, but I thought it was Spanish. It was from Jerez. Like, I didn't know you could have Cypriot sherry.
Oh, all the best stuff is from Cyprus. Best
but I bet that was paint stripper.
Yeah, I bet that's. Do you think that was the well-known cheap one?
See, yeah. Well, whereas I thought I sort of pulled a face at the mince pies and thought, would Rigsby buy that? The Cypriot sherry, yes, Rigsby would buy that. Yes. So nice detail there. But yes, so the postman's arrived and he's hid from him, but then he got caught out and the postman arrives. Who's the actor? He looked a bit familiar, the actor who plays this postie.
It's Larry Martin. He's been like in one episode of everything, you know, he's that kind of actor. Uh-huh. He's probably best recognised. He's in Are You Being Served for quite a few episodes. He's like he's the maintenance man or something, you know, he's one of those guys walking around in a brown overcoat. General semi-regular in Are You Being Served? He also, just as a sitcom thing, in some of the radio versions of Dad's Army, he plays Private Walker, the James Beck role, after James Beck died. A sitcom connection there as well. But yeah, I mean, you look at his CV, is one episode of pretty much everything that's ever been made.
Yeah. Well, there's a good joust now between him and Rigsby because obviously he's there for his tip. That's why he's come through the door rather than just leave the milk. Yeah. Rigsby knows this. And so Rigsby's best form of defence is attack. He goes on the offensive and starts complaining about, he's not got his double cream and all this stuff, so he didn't have to cough up.
Look, I'm set up, sorry.
I'm not going to ask much from that. I thought it could depend on me double cream.
Yeah, but it's the first time, innit? I've never let you down before, have I?
We've never had the right look since you came back from the Costa Brava. Flashing your suntan, singing Viva la Spaniard at 6 in the morning. I very nearly complained to the dairy, I'll tell you that.
Oh, I see. I suppose you think milkmen shouldn't go to the Costa Brava, eh?
It shouldn't. It gives them ideas. Get an attack of the manyanas and start forgetting the double cream.
Fair enough. Want to get me double cream at Christmas? That's when you order it, right? That's when you want it. An extravagance.
He finally relents and he gives him a coin. Is it 10p? I think it might be 10p he gives him. An old 10p.
Big old coin. We don't have any more.
Yeah, I think it might be. There's also I'll give you another tangent here. Did you hear him? Rigsby calls him a lotus eater.
Yes. I didn't know what that meant specifically.
Well, I have looked into it, my friend. So the lotus eaters, this is from Greek mythology. Actually in the Odyssey, which is the second mention we've had of the Odyssey recently. Do you remember I asserted that Dave Lister is actually Odysseus?
Yes.
In our Red Dwarf episode. Yes. Well, anyway, the lotus eaters were people who lived on an island and basically the only food source were these lotus flowers. And it's like a drug, they're a narcotic, and so it messed them up. And they were they were sort of legendarily lazy, spaced out stoners, basically. And it's sort of come to mean, you know, seekers of pleasure, if you like.
Yeah. So we do have a nice little bit of sparring with the milkman, but then we have another someone pop in, the post lady.
Gwen. Yeah, the character's called Gwen, but yeah, I was like, who is this? Like, she's basically, I'm going to use the language of the time, she's the post girl.
Yeah.
Like, I know she's a fully grown woman, I understand that, but she's young, and she seems to be dressed as some sort of girl guide. Is this what postal workers looked like in the 70s? She's got a beret on, which is like she's from the Royal Corps of knee-length skirts or something. But she's got this beret with a cap badge. and she's got a GPO badge on her lapel, which is, I looked this up, it's a postman's security badge. And apparently, like, back in the day, pre-privatisation, all these state employees had to have this, I suppose it's like a policeman's number, isn't it? Policeman's badge. So that really struck me as odd. And I was like, well, what is this character? But basically, she's just the postman.
Yeah. And I assume that is the uniform. That's not something you're going to make up. You just go and get a uniform, don't you? It's a contemporary set.
But it was really jarring to me. And again, it's not criticism of the show. Posties in the 70s look very different.
Well, I think it might be post-women in the 70s. Look different.
Yeah,
I think if you saw a postman, it's just like, flat shoes and black suit trousers and all that. But, it's like, oh, we've got women now. We have to put them in a little beret and a skirt, I guess.
Yeah, maybe.
So playing the post-woman here, it's Helen Fraser.
Mm-hmm.
Again, someone who's been around, all sorts of sitcoms. She's in Billy Liar, the film, Billy Liar, the film version of it. That's what she was best known for. As a young actor with Tom Courtenay. And then she's in The Royal Family, in one episode of The Royal Family where Dave, his parents, come round.
Oh, yeah, I remember that
And
episode.
they're played by Helen Fraser and Tom Courtenay.
Well, I never.
Just one episode, I believe. But she's best known because she was in Bad Girls as a regular in that for many years. So that's what people might recognise her from.
So she's very obviously flirting with Rigsby, which, a couple of things. Why?
Yeah, why?
but then secondly, he's completely oblivious to it. And I think he's oblivious because he's being very defensive because he's not got any Christmas cards. Like, he's not received any Christmas cards. And she's got this one for him. But he's like being all defensive about not having all these cards and he's pretending he's hidden them or whatever.
I simply had to pop in with this. I think it's a Christmas card.
Well, what's so unusual about that? After all, it is Christmas.
Yes, but...
Yes, I'll put it with all the others that have deluged upon me this festive season. Thank you.
There aren't any cards, are there? You see, I pass this house every day. I couldn't help noticing. I've seen your face pressed up against the window, and I longed to bring you a card. That's why I was so delighted when that one turned up.
Have you been drinking?
No, certainly not.
Why is he so oblivious to the fact she's clearly being very flirtatious?
Maybe he can't believe it either.
He just doesn't compute. She's
after a Christmas box.
Yeah, he offers her a drink, doesn't he? Mm-hmm. And she says, "Oh no, I don't drink, Mr. Rigsby. Not when I'm riding my bicycle." "Oh well, it is Boxing Day. I thought you might have had the hot stirrup cup." No. That was one of those jokes that didn't land for me in the sense that I didn't understand what it meant, but it made me laugh just because of the way Leonard Rossiter delivered it. It had the perfect tempo and delivery of a joke, even though I didn't get the joke.
Well, Leonard Rossiter, I mean, obviously we talked about this when we did Rising Damp in more detail, but his energy as Rigsby is just fantastic. He's
amazing.
He's so jittery all the time, and the tone of jitteriness changes. So when he starts later on, when he's trying to, seduce someone, or he thinks he's going to get his end away or whatever, like he's still jittery and kind of nervy and all that, but in a different level. Yeah. It's sort of moving up and down.
He's brilliant. Again, breaking news, Leonard Rossiter is good. Shocker.
Yeah.
But he is brilliant, yeah.
Leonard Rossiter is always very solid, whatever you see him in, but I feel like Rigsby was the perfect fit for him. And it's difficult to imagine anyone else doing it. I've seen occasionally clips of people doing a bit of Rigsby, an impressionist, or, it's like someone doing a stage play or something like that. But it's like you're just doing your best version of Leonard Rossiter.
It's a caricature, isn't it?
And it's not like, oh, well, I'm going to do this character in a different way. Like, this is the way to do it. This is the way.
There isn't a better way to do it. That's the point, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what a hot stirrup cup is?
No, go on. Tell us.
It's a drink. It's a cocktail. It's like a hot toddy sort of thing. It's whiskey and Cointreau, but it's, you'd have it hot, Christmassy type drink. I didn't know that, but it still made me laugh. We do get a little bit of exposition here now. He tells Gwen that he should be at his brother's, but they've basically fallen out, and that all of his tenants are away, so he's home alone. Mm. And now Gwen puts her hand on his leg.
Oh, yeah.
And the penny drops. The penny drops for Rigsby, but he completely blows it by coming on too strong. to like physically manoeuvres her under the mistletoe, and she essentially runs away.
Did you notice, by the way, a little technical side here? They managed to get the shadow of the mistletoe on their faces. I'm pretty sure that wasn't deliberate. I think that was just slightly sloppy lighting. Very much a mistletoe shadow on both of their faces.
I didn't notice that. No. So she runs away. She's left him with this card. He opens it up and he's trying to read it. And he says, I can't read. He's trying to get his glasses. I can't read it. And the punchline is...
Solitary, miserable card. All the best, Rigsby. Happy Christmas. And a... Oh, God, my writing's getting worse than ever.
He sent the card to himself.
I think that's quite a subtle way of delivering that joke, because it could easily have been a bit more obvious. So, cut to Alan and Brenda turn up, and they have come back because they know everyone's gone away for Christmas, so they'll have the place
Rigsby's away at his brother's.
Yes. And these are the two tenants who have been having a bit of a dalliance with each other, but obviously having to hide it from Rigsby, as he wouldn't approve of such thing.
So it sounds like they've just come from Alan's parents' house because Brenda's didn't get on with Alan's mum. And there's a nice line here.
Your mother doesn't like me, does she?
She's just got to get used to you, that's all. You know what mothers are like.
Yeah, I know what your mother's like. She spoils you.
I wouldn't say that.
Then why does she blow on your potatoes?
Again,
Which is a beautiful double entendre.
Yes,
And again,
it
just
sounds filthy.
delivered perfectly. Like, written down, I just read that from my notes, and written down, it's not that funny. But, yeah, very good, very well delivered.
So our whole thing with Alan is he's, lovelorn, but a bit useless and naive.
Yeah. I have a problem with this then, because I agree, that was always Alan's, like, he was sort of frustrated. But it feels like, he's got a girlfriend now. That's not right.
You see, Gareth, it's the 70s. You have a girlfriend in sitcoms, but they don't let you do anything. That's how it works.
They don't let you. They should let you do out.
But it's Christmas, so obviously you should be able to get over the top at least.
Yeah. Well, Alan wants to get jiggy, but basically Brenda's bloody freezing because the house is freezing because it's winter and Rigsby's got no insulation. Yeah. So Alan decides he's going to go and borrow Rigsby's fire. Mm-hmm. See, it's a sign of middle age that I can't have sex in an active draft anymore.
You have to put a jumper on.
Yeah.
These are young people, Gareth. They can do
exactly.
it anyway.
That's what I mean. Brenda's too young to be worrying about that. Caution to the wind.
Well, it's because he wants her to slip into a little negligee and
negligee.
Yes, it's going to be freezing. So Alan goes downstairs and, of course, bumps into Rigsby, who he thought wasn't going to be there. So we get a bit of back and forth here, and the one thing we get is that Rigsby bathes every Friday, whether he needs it or not.
Here's a question for you. Would you eat a sandwich that Rigsby had made for you?
See, all I can think of is Albert Steptoe, dropping his fag ash in a cheese sandwich.
Exactly. That's what I mean. Albert Steptoe sandwich I would not eat. I don't think I would eat a Rigsby sandwich either.
What about Grandad off of Only Fools and Horses?
Absolutely not.
The thing is, if you wear fingerless gloves all the time, who knows what's getting in those things?
So yeah, Rigsby's still defensive. Christmas is a big fiddle. I don't believe in it. But they do pull the cracker. Mm-hmm. And I like this as a nice moment. Alan wins the cracker and Rigsby just snatches the thing off him. I bloody paid for it.
I was wondering about that, I was thinking, have they rigged this up so they know which way it's going to go? Or are they going to pull the cracker? If Rigsby wins it, he goes, yeah, I see, I won. And then if Alan wins, he just goes... I'm having that. Yeah,
I did wonder about that actually. So Alan, who's actually down there to essentially nick Rigsby's fire, has to think fast and says he's got a present for Rigsby, and it's the bath salts that he'd got for Brenda.
And that hence the bathing conversation. Rigsby thinks he's trying to tell him something.
What about the Martin Bormann thing? So. If for listeners, if you haven't watched, there's just a really odd line in here where Rigsby says, they'll write on the front gate, Martin Bormann lives here. I didn't really get that. Martin Bormann was Hitler's private secretary.
Yeah, he's a high-ranking Nazi, but was he renowned for being a bad neighbour? Apart from the Nazi thing?
it's not a great start, is it? But that doesn't mean he's playing music loud. I mean, Hitler's private secretary, that's like Bernard from Yes Minister, but for actual Hitler.
Well, I think that, the whole thing that certainly in his later years, Martin Bormann controlled who got to Hitler, didn't he? Who got the access. And so he was became a great, powerful figure in the whole
Well, Alan,
game.
I've actually Googled it, and I've got more insight here. So in 1973, just before this was filmed, they found Martin Bormann's remains in Berlin, and they'd identified him with like dental records, and he'd got a broken collarbone apparently. So they found his body.
But was there an idea that he'd fled and he was living somewhere in Leeds under an assumed name? Is that the idea? That he might have been...
Well, possibly. They'd obviously never found his body until then. But I don't know. So are we saying that Rigsby is difficult to identify? We need dental records? I still don't get it. Like, I understand why it was a more topical reference then, but I still don't really understand the reference.
Well, that's what I mean. If the kind of the idea was that Martin Bormann was one of those Nazis who had managed to flee and had hidden away somewhere under an assumed identity, we're all looking for him. Maybe that old miserable git who lives up there is Martin.
Maybe. Seems an odd thing to say, 18 months after they actually found his body.
Topical gags.
Anyway, back to our episode, and we've got these two grumbling at each other, and Brenda walks in.
Yes, much to her surprise that Rigsby is there at all. But of course, Rigsby assumes that she's come looking for him in her negligee.
Do you want to describe the flimsy negligee?
70s nylon.
I mean, there's a lot of negligee. Like, it's not revealing at all. She's not an unattractive woman. There's nothing wrong with it, but it is not, it's not sexy, particularly.
It's 70s negligee, not 80s negligee. What we saw in the likes of Up the Elephant or Chanting a Million was a lot more revealing.
None of that.
Just 7 years later.
But there's quite a nice bit of comic, I suppose it's physical comedy, when she walks in and it just immediately goes, and turns around like she sees Rigsby and just legs it. It's good stuff. It's good business.
Rigsby assumes Brenda has come to seduce him on Christmas.
Obviously. Why else would she be there?
Why would he think that? I don't know. But she promised him a Christmas kiss.
Because she just walked into his room in a negligee.
Yeah. But in July, she promised him a kiss at Christmas. So he's ready for that.
And like an elephant, Rigsby never forgets.
And he goes up excited. By the time he gets there, she's changed into streetwear again. That doesn't put him off though. We get another little scene there between them.
Can I just before he goes upstairs, Alan's trying to discourage him, and there's a great line from Rigsby.
This is different, you see. This is Christmas. It's a time when a woman needs a man. When they start getting emotional, they start lowering their defences now. Oh, it's just like VJ night all over again.
VJ night?
Yeah, well, Japan wasn't the only one that surrendered that night,
It's just such an opportunist.
Yeah.
But also, he's reliving the glory days there. 30 years since VJ Day. This is
30 years, and that's his anecdote.
That's his last time he had a good night.
So he goes upstairs. He's coming onto it. He gets rejected. He gets bath salts, is what he gets, which is not what he went up there for. And unfortunately for old Vienna, he kicks the cat in frustration as he leaves.
Yes, classic bad guy maneuver. Kick the cat.
Yeah.
But then we get Philip turning up.
Yeah, so we cut back down to Rigsby's room. Alan's in there blowing up balloons, which is the business he's doing. And Philip arrives, which is good, because Don Warrington's great, and Philip's a good present. I was getting a bit worried we weren't going to see him.
Philip, as with Alan, has turned up thinking the house is going to be empty, and he can have it to himself with his lady friend, Lucy, who he has brought back with him.
But we don't see her.
We haven't seen her yet. But the idea is not that, she's coming into our room and we're going to shack up. He has promised her the spare room.
Yeah, that we've got the whole house to ourselves. Why don't you come back and you can have the spare room? What's going on?
Gareth, it's the 70s, okay? You have to take it gently, you see. And so the idea is this is a lady he's trying to get on with, and if she's living in the house, that's going to make that all a lot easier. But also it means if you invite her around, it's like, don't worry, there's a spare room, everything, no pressure.
Okay. Yeah, so Alan reveals to Philip that Rigsby is indeed home. Philip's mortified. He's not really sure what he's going to do now. But he does think, well, I'll just ask him nicely. I brought him a Christmas present. And he's got this. He reveals this sort of bottle of liquid, which is wine from my country, the old jungle juice, as Alan puts it.
Yes. And as far as we're aware, Philip is a prince of some African tribe of non-specific nature.
Well, we debated this on our podcast last time, whether or not that's true. But as far as Rigsby's concerned, it's true. And as far as the audience is concerned, it's true.
Yes, regardless of what may be revealed at some other point.
There's a good insult here, by the way. When they're talking about Rigsby, Alan says Rigsby has no luck with women. If he played blind man's buff in a harem, he'd end up with a eunuch. That's good. So the setup is this. Philip has got a girl on her way, Lucy. Mm-hmm. He's bought the bottle of jungle juice as a Christmas present for Rigsby that he hopes will mollify him. So he goes upstairs, finds Rigsby on the stairs, and he tells him he's left a present for him downstairs. Mm. In the meantime, Philip's girlfriend Lucy arrives. But she's black.
Oh my God, Alan, she's black.
She's black. So this is really weird to me because Alan is like open mouthed. Oh my God, she's black. Can't believe it. But, he's met Philip, right?
Well, okay, look, right. So this is we watched Game On recently, and even an episode of that, which was from 95, the Mandy character brings a black boyfriend home, and Matt says, but he's black. And she goes, oh my God, I hadn't noticed, sarcastically. And nothing comes of it, but it's noted that he's black, and he's like, oh, you're going out with a black guy. Now, that's 1995. That seemed weird to me watching that. In the 70s, I would believe in a standard white person sitcom, someone comes home with a black girlfriend, they go, oh my God, she's black. I believe that. However, because Philip is black, him taking it with a black girlfriend feels like that wouldn't be even mentioned, would it?
I feel like Alan's reaction is disproportionate. I feel it's like he's shocked that Philip's girlfriend is black. And that doesn't seem shocking to me.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't quite tally, does it?
Anyway, so there's a little bit of awkwardness when he says, "Oh, I didn't realise you were going to be so early," And she's like Philip. She's got a cut glass accent. She says she's from Northampton.
What you do?
I'm blowing up balloons. I'm not very good at it, really. I keep getting a mouthful of carbon dioxide.
And why do you do it?
No, I don't know. Well, it is, in actual fact, one of our customs. I don't suppose you get this sort of thing in Africa.
Oh, I wouldn't know. I come from Northampton.
Alan bolts, because that's what he always does when he's under pressure. And Rigsby arrives.
Yes.
And here is the absolute comic tour de force of the episode. Because Rigsby thinks that this African princess is the gift that Philip is giving him.
Yes.
My God.
Which is a bit of a big present.
What, a slave?
A human being.
Kinda.
It's too much, isn't it? It's too much. What do you get them next year?
What do you get for the man who has everything?
A sex slave.
It's your classic bath salts sex slave mix-up. Story as old as time, Alan.
Yeah.
And Rigsby's trying to talk to her, and he's sort of, nervously racist. He's showing her how water comes out the taps and all that sort of thing.
I think you'll find things pretty easy round here.
Will I?
Yes, there's no walking for miles with a pot on your head, any of that rubbish.
Nervously a racist is a good way of putting it. My note was, wow, they're really ramping up the old racism here. I mean, okay, look, we discussed at length when we did Rising Down in terms of the racism that's in it and how it's worked and how it feels odd 50 years later.
No, but I'm quite comfortable laughing at this. Because we are laughing at Rigsby. He's a fool. She's got all the power in that room. As Philip always has all the power in their interactions. So I'm comfortable laughing at this silly racist old fool. I don't think... You wouldn't make this now. You wouldn't put this on telly now as it is. But it's all right. It doesn't feel like watching Alf Garnett. You get uncomfortable. It don't feel like that to me.
Yeah, I think it definitely sort of slips into that slightly. Just because... Yeah, we all recognise that Rigsby is the fool. But he sort of says and does quite racist things and...
Yeah.
There's very little comeuppance in terms of that. So I think it just feels slightly uncomfortable. But
True.
maybe if I was a black person who'd grown up in the 70s, I would feel slightly harder about it. but yeah, basically...
I grew up in the 70s. I think we're qualified to talk about racism in the 70s.
Yes, I grew up in an area of 99% white people.
Yeah, okay. No, listen, I'm joking. I agree. I think we're obviously coming to this from our perspective and our perspective alone.
Certainly, we're having some fun with race here, but Rigsby is the fool, so I think largely it's okay. Yeah. So the woman here who's playing Lucy is Elizabeth Adair, and she's not like a super famous actor or anything. She's actually retired quite a long time ago, and she's a psychiatrist or a teacher or something now. She's sort of totally changed careers. But she was, for a sort of in her younger days, she was an actor of some repute. But here's the interesting thing. She appeared in a play called The Banana Box.
Oh.
Which you will recall from our episode on Rising Damp is the play that Rising Damp is sourced from.
So who did she play?
Well, I'll for those, just in case you haven't listened to our previous episode, here's a quick wrap-up. Eric Chappell was a playwright. He wrote a play called The Banana Box, which had a sort of a limited run, and someone saw it and went, this is actually quite good fodder for a sitcom, why don't you write that? And he did, and it was called Rising Damp. So we have a lot of repeated characters, and Leonard Rossiter played Rigsby in that play, although the character was called Ruxby at the time. Francis de la Tour was in it as well, and then Don Warrington was in a play. So the play kind of went through a couple of different iterations, but they did a small tour, and so we have most of the cast there. Elizabeth Adair was in that run, and she played the character who is in the play who doesn't make it into the sitcom. There's one character who doesn't make that cut. And basically what happens in the play, as far as I can tell, obviously I haven't read it or seen it, but I've sort of read a bit of a synopsis of it, that what happens in this episode is pretty much what's going on. Philip brings this woman back to go, oh, look, we've got a spare room. I'll talk to the landlord. We'll work it out, because he's trying to get off with her. And in the play, basically what happens is she ends up with Alan and they go off together. Although he's not called Alan in the play, but let's not worry about that. Yeah. The Alan character. And that's because in the play, the Philip character is revealed to not be an African prince at all, but is actually from Croydon, and it kind of ruins his reputation, and so everyone else kind of like thinks he's a loser. Alan and Lucy, they're just like, ugh, pathetic. And it's just he's just left with the Rigsby character, and he is like, oh, look, you are an African prince. Oh, that's comforting to me. I'm going
because he likes to maintain the fiction.
Yes. So I think somewhat of the plot here is taken from that. And having not read the play directly, I don't know how much in terms of sort of specific set pieces or lines. But yes, I suspect there is a lot of connections here. And so they brought in Elizabeth Adair to play this character just in this one episode. Elizabeth Adair is from Newcastle. And it just stuck out to me because, yeah, you can tell by the accent, right?
Hang on a minute. I remember Don Warrington was a Geordie as well.
Exactly, because I made that same joke when we talked about that. Like,
yes.
Why has he got such a cut glass accent when he's from Newcastle? Yeah. And the interesting thing is when they did the play, they did a few shows here and there, but one of them was in Newcastle. And that was where someone saw it. A producer from ITV saw it and sort of suggested it could be a sitcom. So there's a lot of Newcastle connections to this. But it wasn't like... the tour didn't start in Newcastle, so they weren't like based there and thought, oh, we'll get local actors. I think it's just coincidence.
Yeah. That's interesting. Well, okay, let's go back to the scene. And the plot all fairly unravels quite quickly, and the episode finishes... we get all the callbacks and all the edges tied together. The others arrive, and the plot unravels that she's not the gift. The bottle of wine is the gift. He's already promised her a room, so they get their own way that she can have the spare room. Rigsby drinks some of the jungle juice, and there's a great bit of business from Leonard Rossiter playing, man drinking heinous alcohol.
Yes. And it is wrapped up very quickly, isn't it? It feels a bit too quick.
Yeah, it's like they're running out of time, because we also then get, immediately we get Gwen, who comes in. You remember the postie from earlier? She's no longer in uniform, and she's basically saying, oh, I'm out of uniform now, Mr. Rigsby, here I am, and she's all flirtatious again. She's under the mistletoe already. And then the milkman appears, remember him? And he jumps in and kisses the post lady, and Rigsby misses out again, and scene.
Yes. Yeah, it feels very rushed and slightly messy, the ending. And That might just be the nature of writing. It's like, oh, I've set all this stuff up and now it's sort of all a bit tight trying to get it into half an hour. Well, not even half an hour, it's ITV, 24 minutes. So, yeah, perhaps it's just you overwrite something. But given how much setup we have about how many gags we get out of him thinking, oh, she's the present, when he realizes that it's not, he's just like, oh, yeah. There's no kind of comic misapprehension about it, no confusion. He doesn't have to suddenly pretend that that's not what he thought at all. It's just very rapid. And even with the post lady, could we have let Rigsby have a kiss at Christmas? Would that have been so bad? Could we have had a happy Christmas?
No, that'd be silly.
But yeah, as we talked about earlier, it's a miserable grey Christmas for Rigsby. And that is at odds with what I would expect from a sitcom-y kind of Christmas thing. Because even in something like Time, Gentlemen, Please, remember we looked at the Christmas special of Time, Gentlemen, Please? Yeah. And there's a sort of slightly cynical edge to that because, everyone ends up at the pub, so they're all together in this kind of family unit, such as it is. But, the very ending is the pub landlord telling them all to shut up and enjoy Christmas while he serves the food. So they're all arguing. So it kind of, even that has this slightly cynical, dysfunctional family kind of vibe to it. But this is just straight up, Christmas is just a crap day like every other day in my crap life for Rigsby.
It's pretty bleak, isn't it? But you're focusing on Rigsby. All the others get what they want. They're all having they've all had a good day.
And that's Rising Damp, right?
That's Rising Damp right there. Yeah. It's a pretty grim day for Rigsby. It's a grim Christmas. What's your grimmest Christmas memory?
Oh God, sitting in my bedsit in Brighton,
all alone,
hoping that a shop might be open so I could buy some cheese.
Yeah, that sounds good. My grimmest Christmas was I worked when I was a student. I worked in Butlins in the summer. Yeah. I did 3 summers working at Butlins in Skegness. I had a great time.
Hi.
But one year, that's our phrase, not yours. One year, I signed up to go for Christmas. And it was like, probably like 10 days from, I don't know, the day before Christmas Eve to the 2nd or 3rd of January, something like that. And you worked every day. There was no sort of shift system. It was like, you're there every day, you're going to work. And I was on the daytime shift. So I was working like 9 till 6, whereas all my friends were doing the evening shift, the sort of 3 till midnight shift. So I would get drunk with them, sleep for 3 hours, and be sat working in a shop at Butlins, just feeling terrible, cold, with all these kids all happy, saying, look what I got for Christmas. What did Father Christmas bring you? This miserable life is what Father Christmas brought me.
It's just the same as every other day, except everyone's got their hand out.
Ugh. Well, to our listeners, I hope you've enjoyed this upbeat, festive episode. And you can find us on social media. We're on Twitter and Instagram at BritComPod. Or if you can look on Facebook, just put British Sitcom History Podcast into the search bar, you'll find us. And of course, tell your friends. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
And thanks for joining us this year. And we will see you with our new series soon.
Bye.
Bye.